Alrighty. So, first things first, everybody. Step one, I'm glad you're here. The rationale. Across the hall, there's a hackathon workshop going on. Hackathon is a buzzword. It's exciting. It's interesting, a hackathon. So you're here rather than there. I appreciate that, number one. Hopefully it means that you're in the right place, so you're at the early stage of a program. You're either maybe rebooting a program. Please, welcome. So thank you for having the discipline. Welcome. Discipline, the interest in the start, not the hackathon. We'll talk about why shortly. Second piece. Throughout the hour today, throughout our workshop, there are going to be little special moments where you're going to see this symbol. This symbol means there's a free hour up for grabs, free hour of consulting from this guy. So keep that in mind. You see this, it means some sort of interactivity is about to happen. If you interact, if you're first, you get a free hour. Ding, ding. Okay? So, you haven't seen this yet, and I'm going to try to make a little bit of time at the end to maybe circle back to this. This is our maturity model. What I want you guys to take away from this is two main things. The first thing is what you're seeing here in terms of the apps, and I'm not going to label them all now, but in terms of the progression, this progression is based on a certain level of complexity, a certain level of necessary learning. The early stage apps that you see here, the first three that we saw yesterday, all the way on the left, those are the easiest to start with, the lowest barrier to entry. You can get them, grab them, and run them pretty quick and eventually run them in certain volume. As you progress through the maturity, you'll see that you're progressing through a certain level of complexity. So the next batch, events, hackathons, for example, the pitch, the incubate, these require a certain level of knowledge in advance, both from your side as well as from the end users. So they have to do a semi-specialized type of activity. The third set, the most complex here, obviously at the transformation stage, highest level of complexity, for example, suggests there's a lot of moving parts. So we leave that to the end when everything else, the full foundation is set, right? For our purposes today, we're going to be talking about the first three, the start phase. The second point I want you guys to make sure, I want to make sure it's very clear when you look at this. You see that impact on the left, time on the bottom here. This does not mean that you're going to have a tiny bit of impact during the start stage. You got to understand that when you're at the scale stage of your overall progression, you just have a lot more going on here. You can't do that much in the start phase. You can run a couple challenges. You can set up a forum. At this stage, your team is bigger. Your resources have expanded. You have the full foundation in place already. You're doing the highest complexity as well as the quick, the volume-based activities. So when you see impact, don't think that it's just a tiny bit of impact. I want to go direct to hackathon because there's more impact. That's not what we're saying here. We're saying that by the time you get here, you're doing everything. You're doing everything at volume, at scale. So that's why you, of course, in time, have more impact, right? So just keep those two items. We can circle back for any questions towards the end. In regards to the start phase, then, the three apps and key elements, core elements that I want you guys to walk away with today. Three core elements: positioning, doing, and tracking. What I find is most useful when you're trying to, these are concepts, right? What I find is most useful when you're trying to digest these kinds of concepts is to make them as practical, as relatable as possible. I always tie it to personal experience. For our purposes today, I'm going to be using a metaphor from my own history, my own personal experience. I believe it's quite relatable to everyone. We've all had similar experiences. We've all been to the place that I'm going to be referencing. We've all done the tasks that will be referenced a little bit later. So keeping in mind positioning, doing, tracking, and those are going to be articulated, glued together through a single metaphor, okay? Moving along then. When you consider positioning, doing, and tracking, these elements combined, and what we're going to walk through for the rest of the day today, not the day, the hour, is what we call the right start, right? So there you can start all sorts of places. The right start is at this stage with these three apps, the three tasks that we're going to be elaborating on, and those elements of positioning yourselves as well as the activities, doing the activities, and tracking basically everything. And we have a strong proponent of that who presented yesterday. I'm sure you all remember very clearly that massive, the Excel picture. So starting with positioning and the beginning of our story, or the metaphor. So when I was a kid, I'm Greek. You saw the last name, very Greek. As a Greek and a family, my dad had a restaurant. Within the restaurant, there's lots of pieces to the restaurant. Does anybody want to guess where I worked as a kid in the restaurant? All right, so everybody gets a free hour. No, just joking. I thought that might happen, so I kept it out from there. So just putting that aside. This is correct. We'll get there, but before we get there, I worked in the kitchen. So the dishwasher obviously is in the kitchen. And you might be thinking, why is this guy talking about kitchens? Why is he talking about a restaurant? Where's the metaphor going? The reason I'm saying this and I'm linking it to positioning is I need you guys to understand that at the start phase, and especially initially when there's there's moving parts and you have to gotta get a lot of alignment, a lot of people with questions. Your positioning should be the same as conceptualizing a kitchen in a restaurant. It's the most central piece of the restaurant. If you think anything other than this, you're in for a rude awakening. And this is more so towards the people that you're going to have to convince. You're going to have to convince people that you guys are in the kitchen. You're producing the most important service for your organizations, right? Those people that might think otherwise, there's a lot of mistakes in the past. We see one very, very big mistake right here. This was a very smart guy. There's a lot of things that he said that were 100% true, right? He didn't get this one, and he didn't get it by a very, very, very large degree. You guys are, of course, all working with this thing called this internet. Fun fact, bright idea, founded in 1999. Hashtag foresight. Ding, ding. Now, I don't want to get too bleak with this, right? But these are facts on the table. The trend here is that you don't have a lot of time, right? You have to move fast. You have to move with a certain level of urgency. And you have to convey these thoughts of, we're in the kitchen. We're providing the most important service for organizations. If there's no kitchen, there is no future to your organization. These are facts. And you have to, of course, make sure everybody understands these, believes these, and then take action so that you can counter potential not so great future. So when it comes to positioning, you're in the kitchen. You have to proceed with urgency. You will expect difficulty, right? Kitchen's a crazy place. People get burned. People are bleeding. There's knives flying around. My dad screamed quite a lot. There were, various spatulas and other objects that were made. I learned the hard way. But at the end of the day, I was one piece in a much larger context, which we're going to start talking about now. When we start reframing, the restaurant is a business. Consider that your company. You are the program. You are the kitchen. You are providing the future for the most important service within the kitchen. Lots of activities. So you guys guessed it already. So you skipped ahead. Good for you. But I was doing the dishes. Within the kitchen, there are lots and lots of stations. There's pieces. There's puzzles. There's an increase in complexity before you get to the stage of being the pastry chef making soufflés. That's not where you're going to start. You can't. I didn't start with a soufflé. If I did, I would have failed and I would have gotten fired, sort of. I wouldn't have gotten paid, that's for sure. With each one of these stages, there's certain things you're learning, but you have to start from the beginning. You have to start with the dishes. If there are no dishes, you're not going to serve any soufflé, period, right? So, having skipped ahead, this would have been the moment that you should have guessed the dishes, but when we think about each one of these stations, you have tools at your disposal. So the dish station has certain specific tools. The saucier has certain specific tools. The dish station has 3 very fundamental tool sets. Each one of those tools they provide a very specific service to the kitchen, right? Now, here comes the fun part. A hand faucet. Does anybody know what a hand faucet is? Most people know what a hand faucet is. It's this spray thing. It's like basically a hose, you grab it, and you just spray everything down, right? It's pretty hot water. It's not getting the job done. It's getting things moving. So that's the very first step in washing those dishes, and it's a lot of dishes, right? It's pots and pans, it's everything. So your hand spray is basically going to get the ball rolling. Everything's going to get a good rinse. You're not done yet, just starting. Steel scrubber, pots and pans, burnt pots and pans. The saucier has been very busy. The pastry chef has made some mistakes. You got to get those things cleaned real quick, and it's not going to be just a rinse. You're going to get down and dirty. You're going to scrub on that thing. You're probably going to get some cuts. You might have to put some gloves on, but at the end result, that saucier is going to be able to make that soufflé. You're going to be able to make that special dish. The dishwashing machine, so the way a kitchen works is basically you spray everything down, you put the hard out, like the burnt pots and pans on the side for hand scrubbing. Everything else after you spray it down goes in the washing machine. It's basically one single, all-encompassing, one shot, and everything gets done, move on to basically move on to scrubbing. Now, if you get these three tools, these three conceptual tools, the hand faucet, the steel scrubber, the dishwashing machine, and we try to reframe them now in terms of the tools you guys will be using in your kitchens, in your programs. If we think of the hand faucet, it's just getting the ball rolling, right? It's not finishing the job. If we were to think of one of the three apps, remember, it's discuss. What's the next one? Next one? All right, so what would the hand faucet be? Okay, who said that first? Who was it? Boom, 1 hour. So I'll follow up. Next one, now you guys know what the game is, so if you rack up a couple hours, maybe we have a full consulting engagement, we'll see. Steel scrubber. Boom. Steel scrubber is the hard, you're not going to get that done with the washing machine. Sorry, you're not going to get the burnt pots and pans cleaned in the washing machine. This is not going to do it. You need to get down and dirty, and once you solve that little problem, which is a burnt pot, burnt pan, specialized dish, Saucier can go make that wonderful sauce. Now, last one, it's pretty obvious, so there's no free hour anymore. Dishwashing machine is your optimize. It's one shot, lots of dishes. You're going to get the small dishes. You're going to get the big dishes. All together, you got a big job done, right? So far, so good? So 2 hours. Boom. 2 hours each. No. 1 and 1, total, cumulative 2 hours. Next step, doing. So we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive on the apps themselves now, but keep those reference points in mind. The hand faucet, steel scrubber, the dishwashing machine. So we start with discuss. Baseline understanding here. This is meant to be a large discussion. Obviously, the picture tells a lot. This is a senior leader positioning towards the entire organization, right? It's not meant to be a couple people here and there. Everybody engages. Purposefully meant to be large scale. So it's not something hyper-focused at all. Everybody's going to talk about this broad subject matter. Now, when we mean everybody, a lot of you guys are there's lots of countries involved, so you want this links very clearly to the geography, the mapping. You want everybody to engage. So when you're thinking about what kind of topic should we position to the organization, and you're going to be working with your CXO, whatever the X may be, to define that topic, high level. You don't need to refine it too much, but it needs to be important. Something that's, centerpiece to your organization. As an example then, we heard this yesterday. What does think bigger mean to you? For us at Bright Idea, for me personally, I'm going to show an example shortly, but just take a moment for yourselves to think about this. What does think bigger mean to you? For me, and brace yourselves. Think bigger.
To the generation knocking at the door. Break. Break it open. Let the knocker rust. Window summons. High hearts and youth have destiny enough. The mystery and the power enshrined in you are all this time. And at this moment, new. And not but you can tell what part you play. Nor can you tell until you know your way. For this alone, this always will succeed. The miracle and magic of the deed.
All right, so obviously you guys know a lot more about me. Obviously I like whiskey. What I want you guys to take away from that, and what I want you guys to realize when you're positioning these kinds of forums, discuss forum to your organization, you're going to learn a lot about people. You're going to learn a lot about a lot of people. So right now, if this was a forum within Bright Idea, I would post this to the forum. What does that say about me? So obviously, one, I like whiskey. What else does it say? I am looking at a company that traditionally, Ballantine's, Scotch. You'd think it's traditional, a bunch of old guys, no offense, sitting in a room, some mahogany spread, some leather chairs, sipping whiskey. Not too techy maybe, you know, barrels. These guys are jumping times 10 ahead. But in essence, you could consider this is a marketing tactic, fine. Down the line, Mr. Musk is coming along saying we're going to Mars. We're going to actually need this. Right? It's actually practically, you know, it is a problem that they have solved potentially. This is a real glass. It's a glass that works in 0G that you can sip whiskey from. And if you know anything about Scotch, you know, the glass matters. There's a lot of complexity, et cetera, et cetera. We'll leave it there. So right now you've learned a great deal about what I like to think about. Obviously, I'm obsessed with maybe not whiskey as much as space and the future, et cetera, all of that. When your employees are going to be submitting these different notes, you might learn very similar things about them. Probably they were not going to talk too much about whiskey, unless maybe they are, and I'd like to meet them. But keep that in mind, and let me switch back here. Keep that in mind when you run these. You're targeting a massive, super broad audience. The subject matter in this case, what does think bigger mean to you? I mean, it could be anything, but you're gonna, there's a lot of information you're gonna break down in those comments, in all those notes. So, does anybody want to share? Just one person, 1 hour. What does think bigger mean to you? I'm gonna pick. Oh, boom.
To me, it means actually going above and beyond. It's using your imagination.
There you go.
To then create something that is out there that might not be attainable today.
Yep.
You can see a path to potentially achieve it.
No? How could anybody respond? Like, well, you know, what kind of path would you take? Where would you start with that? Like, just in saying that, just in someone's input of that information, you'll begin a conversation. I could now have a conversation with you about that one-liner. That's all you're really expecting from your employees, one-liner, and then start breaking it down. Keep going. Where does it go? Within that, you might learn, well, like somebody's talking about some element of the business, actually, maybe we should do something that's a challenge. Maybe you'll have a connection there. You don't really know, but you're going to learn a lot, right? So we got 3 hours so far. These hours are just going like wildfire.
So I guess you're saying like the first thing that you would do when you roll out is something like broad like that just to kind of get engaged.
You can. We're going to go through 3 basic criteria to answer the question of what exactly you should do when you start. This is one. There are 3 options. This is one of the options. And the one question to ask is basically they're all yes or no. If you answer yes, then this is the one to go with. If you answer no, then you have some other options, right? Within the start phase, all 3 apps are at your disposal. Whether or not your organization needs them is to be defined upon answering those questions, right? Moving along then to optimize. Skipped solve on purpose for now. Optimize. A business area. I want to make sure we're really, really clear on what we mean by business area. So, when you first see that, you might be thinking of function, finance, HR, marketing, et cetera. That's a business unit. When we say business area, and this is linked to with the example yesterday about an experience, we're not just talking about an individual entity, individual unit. We're talking about a business activity that happens potentially across multiple different units. So what I'm going to be referencing shortly, actually, and before I get to that, within optimize, you're streamlining, you're improving, you're basically aiming for those incrementals. So imagine again the dishwasher. Everything, lots of little ideas, lots of little increments, all together cumulatively have one large impact. All your dishes are done in one shot. The example that we used yesterday was experiential. In this case, I'm going to, once again, I like using these, semi-metaphor, in this time, personal experience. On my way here, I flew here. I'm from New York. I'm assuming many of you guys flew to California. This is the first time I ever used Virgin America. So in my previous life, I flew almost every week across Europe, thousands of hours of flight. I had never been on Virgin, and Tuesday was the first time I had experienced Virgin. So I'm referencing this, and we'll see why shortly. For our purposes, I want us to use this as an example. How can we improve the flight experience for our customers? Let's make believe we are Virgin America, or Virgin Atlantic, or Virgin whatever. Virgin Europe, or UK, maybe one day. Go ahead.
Are we going to get a copy?
Yeah, everything is recorded, for better or worse. I'm going to pass that around. Well, we haven't been passing that around. You've got to stay on your game, Dennis.
They're going quick.
All right. So let's make believe we are Virgin America, and we want to improve this experience. The flight experience is linked to 100 different pieces of Virgin. There isn't, I mean, there's the machine itself. There are the people in the machine. There's how you got into the machine. There's lots of moving parts, right? You have to realize that when you move from Discuss, you get into potentially running Optimize as a challenge. You're increasing, to a small extent, the layering of complexity that you guys are bringing forward. So in the first one, you're having a discussion with the CEO, finding that topic, you got a one-liner, you're good. Moving forward then, Optimize, slightly increased layer of complexity. You have to break it down a little bit further. So if we're thinking, let's talk about X experience, in this case, flight experience, we as a team, the program team, you have to break it down a little bit further. You have to give a little bit more information to your end users. In this case, the flight experience, you start with purchase, there's a check-in and boarding, there's a pre-flight in-flight, there's the arrival. Those are broad, I'm not the expert, but those are broad stages of the flight experience, right? And I'm sure some of you know much better, but I'm going to put that aside for now. Now, let's say when we as a team, we're breaking this down, we're thinking, okay, what do we want to focus on for this optimized challenge? Purchase, the purchasing experience has been done. There's lots of different agents behind it. It's a lot of moving. Let's put that one aside. Check-in and boarding, there's 101 different apps. Let's put that one aside. Arrival, not sure what we could do there. Let's focus on pre-flight and in-flight. Let's focus on that experiential segment, right? Keep going. Break it down a little bit further. You are basically creating a little playground for your employees to pick and choose, okay, what should I focus on? I'll focus on that, on that, on that, but not literally anything. There's a certain layer of focusing, just a little bit more than Discuss, not nearly as much as Solve, but you're breaking further. So boarding, there's boarding, seating, overhead luggage, safety, hygiene, food, entertainment. Hygiene I'm using for the bathroom. I didn't know what was a better word for that. So let's say these are the subsegments of the area you want to focus on for your optimized challenge. So within optimizing the flight experience, you're asking your end users, your employees to focus on pre-flight or in-flight, and within those segments, give us your best ideas for improvement. My experience in Virgin, and these are absolutely for sure innovations that they have brought to market. This blew my mind. I've been, again, many, many, many thousands of hours of flights. I've never seen something quite like this, and some of you probably already have. This thing. All right, I'm going to stop it there. So basically, this is what really, really caught my attention. They're kind of making fun of you at that moment. Kind of saying, like, if you don't know how to do this already, I mean, okay, thanks for joining us, but really? Somebody had this idea in Virgin. I don't know who it was, but somebody had this idea. I now, as a customer that potentially will fly a lot, want to use Virgin America. This is purely experiential for me. They definitely put some budget into making this show here. But I now like Virgin. I never flew with them before. Now I will. That's one small, like it's a tiny tweak to an activity that is, in my experience, the most boring, the most repetitive, the most like annoyingly slow, and you're stuck in there and you've been waiting, you're on the thing. It's just, there's nothing positive about it, except now it's fun. That tiny little experience, someone came up with it, and well, now Virgin's got a new customer. I think that's good for them. Another piece, again, optimize, lots and lots of little increments. Some of you that have been on Virgin America, you've seen this interface. Again, one of these interfaces, all the interfaces that I had ever seen, pretty boring, pretty clumsy, clunky, like knocking the thing so the button actually clicks. This was totally seamless, and two things that really, really caught my attention. What is that? I had never seen this, where you're going to talk with people in other seats. You can't use your, well, maybe historically you couldn't use your phone, or I think you still can't. They have Wi-Fi. You have a chat room, so you can talk with other people on the plane. A little community all of a sudden. It's just fun. It's maybe nobody was going to use it, but it's this little tiny option that you have. Well, some of us did use. Yes, I didn't personally, but I heard them talking about it, and then I looked. I was like, "What is that?" And then I found it. Next piece here, and I love this one. So they make it real clear in another video, which I didn't grab, but that they're not going to be pushing the carts around to dole out food. You just order it, and we'll bring it to you. So it's per request. It's also per payment, but that's on the side note. Pairings. I have never seen, no steward has ever asked me if I would like to pair with a specific beverage, with food with a specific beverage, or a beverage with a specific snack. No one. And yet, if I click on that, they're going to show me a couple pairings. Again, this is a pure customer experience, flight experience. I really want to use Virgin again, and I really want to get a couple pairings. When I'm real hungry, I'll just eat all day, or for 8 hours. These tiny, these are multiple increments from one single optimized challenge, right? You launch that challenge, improve the flight experience, you got the new video, you got the pairings, you got the chat. All of these will cost something, but at the end of the day, I'm going to, hopefully, soon, maybe for them, be paying thousands in time to Virgin, right? So if you're thinking about running Optimize and you're ready to put in that little extra effort, you got to break it down, show your end users the pieces that you want them to focus on. In this case, the flight experience and those elements. They're going to start submitting ideas, and maybe you'll get a couple new videos. Maybe you'll get a new, I don't know, interface.
These links in your submission.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
They're automatically.
Yeah. Yeah, the videos, everything. It's the one submission form you can. I mean, if I was submitting for the previous one, it would have the Valentine's video. If I was submitting for this, if I had created, I mean, maybe they haven't created the videos yet. If we're talking about the flight experience, it's probably just going to be an idea. Let's enhance the flight safety instructional process. Let's make a video. We don't have to have the steward learn how to do it. Maybe there's probably training for stewards to always do it this way or something. Maybe they reduce a cost there. I'm not really sure what happened. But there's probably potential impacts. I wouldn't say that there's a final product at this stage, at the end of the challenge, right? So at the end of the Optimize, you're probably going to have ideas. You're going to vet them, and then you're going to say, OK, let's do this one. If someone's built the video, great. We don't have anything against that. My favorite, Solve. I think personally, and this isn't shared, but personally I think it's one of the most powerful of all the different challenges you could run at any stage. So again, remember the maturity model. You're going to be running Solve, hopefully, at volume, 10 per year, 15 per year, 20 per year. Everybody's got problems. We've all got lots of problems. Organizations, there's problems that are spread across the board. You just have to find them. This isn't the easiest task, right? When you're looking for solutions, you have to first find the problem, right? So we'll talk about that shortly. 3 layers of potential problem solving using the Solve app. You have pure technical. So one way of scouting out these problems, go look for what's already blocked. What's not working for some reason, it's already in the pipeline. People are trying to figure it out, but it's just not working. You can go to different angle, look for more strategic, future-facing business problems. Something is going to happen next year. We know it's going to happen. We're not ready for it. We know there's going to be a problem. It's strategic-oriented rather than like tactical. We've got to do this now. Still a problem. You still got to fix it. You need one solution. Is there, no? Other option, design. This is if you have engineers, this is pretty much their bread and butter. They love it. Any kind of engineering design challenges where they have to create little schematics or whatnot, launch as many as you can. They'll engage immediately. It's their little puzzle games, and reference puzzle games shortly. So, as an example. This is a big one, so whoever gets this one within the next 5 minutes gets 2 free hours. Ready? Not 5 minutes, 2 minutes. Boom.
Have the chicken eat the corn, have the fox eat the chicken, and then take the fox over.
Well, you want all 3 of them to go over.
And they will make it.
See, you know what? That's that's innovative, and that's why you just got 2 hours of free consulting, because that's not the well. That's fascinating. Absolutely wasn't expecting that. Let's make believe that they have to be in one piece, but you got 2 hours for sure. Next. What?
You take the chicken over, you go back. You take the seed over, you go back. Then you go back, and then you take the chicken back. Then you take the fox back. Then you go back, and you grab the chicken. And then
You corrected yourself midstream because you said you're going to take the fox first. You meant that you're going to take the chicken first because you corrected it later.
And then you go back.
Yes. So what I wanted to highlight here, and this is basically just a brain teaser, and usually they're very these are easy to digest. These are easy to consider. Like you get it. The thing I want you guys to take away is with this long paragraph here is there are very specific variables. They're very defined. There's really, well, in our case, there's two potentially. I'm not sure if we, maybe we want to eat the chicken later, or the seed, or plant the seed later. But there's generally speaking going to be one primary solution. Those variables need to be put on the table, so you're going to have to break it down. You're going to have to find when you're running Solve, there is work. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. And when I talk about this work, and I didn't think we were going to get solutions so quick, so I'll put that on the side. But what I want you guys to reference is this very, very smart man. You know it already. Anybody want to tell me who said this? There's no hour here. You're not allowed. Yes, who said that? Yes, basically, you guys need to be prepared to put in the 55 minutes. You need to be able to go to your organization when you find the problems. You're going to have to get all that information, break it down, put it on the page for your end users to see. Otherwise, they can't solve the puzzle. They can't solve the problem. It's not the easiest thing to extract this information and structure it. It takes time. It'll take weeks. But if you do it right, you'll get to a stage where all the variables are on the table, all the factors are there, and what you're doing in essence is getting the challenge to a stage where your end user's response, the ideas that come in, are going to be as close as possible to implementation. All the variables are there, so all your unknowns are on the table. If they can answer those unknowns, there's no question of will it work, budget this, the other thing that. It's implementation. That's what you need to be able to do, especially at the start stage, especially for your organizations. Prove your worth. And reference point to the third workshop. Definitely get to that workshop for tracking. We'll talk about that shortly. But Solve. You're structuring, you're putting in the 55 minutes so that your challenges are as close as possible the solutions are as close as possible to implementation, right? You don't want to have to wait and waste time, basically, making additional decisions. You need to be at the stage where, oh, that's it. That is the solution. Done. Let's Now, one of the reasons I think problem solving is extremely powerful. What are you actually doing when you are launching these kinds of challenges? Can anyone tell me what this thing is? I don't know what this thing is called. What this thing is problem solving, right? When you were, I don't know, 2? I don't know what the age range is, but at some point, every single one of us probably had one of these. Problem solving is something built in, right? It's not some new methodology. It's not design thinking. It's not running a hackathon or doing a pitch and filling out. You're tapping into something that is inherent in your employee base. So you don't have to scale them up in terms of learning. You're tapping into the very, very foundational, it's a human thing. We solve problems. So realize the power of problem solving, of the solve, that you get right to the solution as quick as possible. You don't need to scale people up in terms of like how they do it, what they do. They see it, they have the variables, they're fitting the square peg in the square hole, so on and so forth. Make sense? Right.
Is it fair to say that this, by definition, though, is not incremental? It's not taking lots of...
This is one of the, this is linking to the impact, right? The bigger, how big a problem is will define how big the solution is, right? It could be one small problem in a small engineering team, and they just need to tweak it. They need to get that solution. It could be, just one wire doesn't fit somewhere. I don't know what. Alternatively, if it's some future-facing strategic business problem, it's going to hit, could have a massive impact. I don't know. It's quite. It depends on what the problem is. But obvious thing is, if the problem is huge, the solution will be huge, right? You could conceptualize potentially these are competition killers, depending on what the problem is. So, I mentioned before about the selection of which is which one you should pick first, depending on these 3 questions. So, sequential questions, one at a time, based on our recommendation. Is the organization engaged? Are the doors open? Are people talking? Do they communicate to each other? Is there cross-functional collaboration, cross-silo collaboration? Does that structure, that framework already exist? If your organizations are already open, move on to the next. Is the organization engaged? Yes, move on. If not, discuss is your option, right? You got to start there. The hand faucet, get it all, one big rinse, get everybody going, start the process. You're not finished, but you're starting the process, right? Now, if the organization is already engaged, I strongly recommend going direct to. Are our leaders facing major barriers? So when you're scouting out problems, whether it's existing problems or future-facing problems, these are basically going to be of certain layer. Your leaders are going to be the ones who identify these. These are your challenge sponsors. These are the people that will have the budget to implement those solutions as quickly as possible. But if you go and start scouting out across these leaders, are you facing a problem? You have that discussion, you start breaking it down. If the answer is yes, start solve. Your go-to solve. Volume is basically what you're looking at. As many problems as you can, fix them as quickly as you can, prove your worth as quickly as you can. If you can't find those, there's an amount of time necessary there, there's a certain complexity. If you can't get that one, if you can't put in those 55 minutes for whatever reason, go direct to optimize. But whichever experience it might be, depending on your organizations, how they're structured. But if you can't get to solve, go direct to optimize. And again, run more than one. This isn't a one-shot silver bullet. There is no such thing. All of these are meant to be recurring events throughout the entire maturity, the entire progression of your programs, right? So, last piece here. So yesterday we had a very interesting, in my opinion, very important presentation from Mr. Steve Healy. What I'm about to show, I'm surprised he didn't show it. I tout this like gold. But within the notion of tracking, your organizations obviously want to see results. Let's assume that you've started the program appropriately, you've set the foundation, maybe you've opened up with a discuss forum, maybe then you've gone into solve challenges, you've started creating those returns. If you aren't paying attention to if you aren't doing what this gentleman here is doing, you're making a mistake right out of the gates. The very first thing you should be doing is keeping an eye on everything. The only way you're going to get this, which I don't think anyone on the planet will say no to this guy. If Steve Healy came to me right now and said, give me your job, I'd probably say yes. The guy got it right, and if he can say this, then I can't say this. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't done the math, my mistake actually. But if you can show this to any leader, any person in your organization, CX, whatever, no one is going to question you. Everybody's going to, basically the moment after you show this, if you can show this, will be how much more do you want? What do you need? It's not a question of like, well, can we? It's what do you need? Tell me quickly. Do you need more budget? Do you need more resources? Do you need more time? Do you need this? Basically, the only way you can get to this number is tracking. And as Steve showed us, you're tracking not one or two things. You're literally tracking everything. You're tracking the types of challenges, where the ideas are moving. People very often forget about the after of the challenge. So using Discuss as an example. After Discuss, you're breaking down a huge amount of content. You're learning about your people. You're learning about your audience. If you can't get that content put in, you have to put in the effort, and it's going to be a certain amount of time where you're maybe not running another challenge because you have to put those resources. If you only have one person, if you have two people, you're going to have to pay attention to that data to make an educated decision next. Do you want to run Solve? Do you want to run Optimize? You're literally tracking everything from the layer of projections. Everybody's scared about projections. Well, we don't know. Yeah, fine, we don't know. If your organization doesn't have something to look at to say it could be that, then they're not going to care. There's a certain level of risk there, but if you've set the foundation right, you're reducing your risk. If you're running Solve, for example, Solve is meant to reduce your risk as far as possible. All the variables are there. If you get to a solution, you implement the solution, results, done, right? Now, I'm a huge fan of metaphors. I try to tie them into everything. So, can anyone tell me what activity within the kitchen here, your kitchens, what activity is tracking? What station is tracking? Expediter is the boss. Expediter is the guy who pays attention to absolutely everything. They know which plates are ready, when the plates are ready. They know which dishes are coming when, within a certain amount of time, e.g. seconds, minutes. They know how much produce is left. Is the meat locker full? Is the delivery guy there? How many people are in the front? Is the dishwasher taking a break? Every single piece, every single moving part in the kitchen, the expediter is paying attention to you. All of you are expediters. I said before that you got to start with the dishes. You're not dishwashers, right? Like the humble dishwasher is an incredibly critical role. If the dishes don't get done, nothing gets done. You're also expediters in the beginning. Every single one of you is expediting this entire process. And the only way you can expedite is by paying attention to literally everything. How much time you're spending, how much time the challenge managers are spending, the employee base, how much time are they putting in? 5% of their annual time? It doesn't mean that you're going to build it into the merit increases at the end of the year yet, but you're paying attention to all of it. You're tracking all of it so that when it does come time to build it in, because you've been successful, when it comes time to talk to HR and say, innovation is now being built into our annual merit increases because every single person in the company is an innovator, you have all these facts on the table and you just show, let's go back a step, that, and they ask you, what do you want? How much and when, right? It's so simple. That's a joke. It's not simple. It's difficult. There's nothing really simple about this, but if you do it right, you do it in time, you focus on those numbers, make sure that you pay attention to those numbers, you run intelligently, you gather the information, you'll be fine. Skip that part. So, recap. 3 core elements. Positioning. You are in the kitchen. You are providing the future for your organization. If you think anything less than that, you're already making the mistake. You're not some bubble entity. You're not some parallel structure somewhere else. You are at the center. The center is creating the future. You got to do things in time. You can't just jump ahead and let's just go do a pitch event. Great, we can do that. We'll do that in time. Let's set a foundation first. Let's make sure that everybody, the doors are all open. Everybody's open to discussion, open to sharing their considerations. Everybody understands how to optimize different elements of the business. They've already geared themselves mentally to respond to challenges in different ways. And of course, at the end of the day, tracking literally everything that's going on. You are expediters. Put those pieces together. You have the right start. Ask me anything. Thank you. Does anybody want to circle back to the maturity model? I don't want to go too in depth on that, but if anybody wants to, that's open. Otherwise, any questions? Shoot.
So one of the things that we struggle with. Microphone.
Oh, my bad. Dennis.
Thanks.
Is it on? Oh, sorry. It's not going to make any noise. It's basically a prop. It's for the recordings.
Oh, okay.
So it's not going to. It's weird.
Okay. So one of the things that we're challenged with, no pun intended, is deciding how much we communicate back with employees.
Yeah.
I would say we're fairly engaged, but it's so I'm trying to decide, whether we're in the discuss or whether we want to go to some of the other ones. But we've made a commitment, at least internally, that we want to answer every suggestion that an employee submits. The problem with that is that as you scale, that becomes very challenging, and the resources in the background. I'm just wondering, from your experience and the Bright Idea team or others here, what is the best practice?
Look, especially in the beginning, you want feedback. You always think of it from a personal perspective. If someone is providing their time to support the greater organization, time is the most valuable resource across the board for all of us. So what they're doing is giving you their time, they're giving you their mind share. It's not a small thing, and we're asking them to do that. So especially in the beginning, it's incredibly important to give them as much feedback as possible within the resources that you have, right? If you're one person running the show for 50,000 people, and you just ran a challenge across 1,000, it's not the easiest thing to do. Now, there's a balancing act there because you do want to provide that feedback, especially in the beginning, but there's certain tactics that you can apply. One of them could be, as you progress, you're going to be using different challenge activities. You're going to be using different types. Make sure those are real clear. What is discussed? What is solved? What is optimized? Each one of those, people will expect with discuss, there's a lot of feedback. There's a lot of back and forth. That's what it's built for, to create that conversation. Solve isn't really meant to be, let's give you detailed feedback. It's either it works or it doesn't. So the feedback is reduced once you get to solve. Either the solution fits or it doesn't. So your feedback within solve is it didn't work, done. That isn't to say that during the collaboration piece, you're still trying to help people develop their ideas if it is developable. But the first piece could be make sure you specify this is a discuss. You're not going to maybe call it discuss to your audience if you don't want to. But for them, setting the expectation that discuss is this type. And as you progress, you're not going to run 20 discuss per year, 2 or 3, they're very large scale. So you can specifically plan. Planning is also incredibly important, but I put that one aside for now. You can plan that in February and in August, we're going to run a discuss. So I need to plan 2 weeks at the end for full focus on providing this feedback. If you run 5 solve per year, you don't need the same amount of feedback because it's much more strict. It's either a yes or no. Optimize is somewhere in the middle, so again, you're going to need some additional resources. So maybe I always recommend making sure that when you position a challenge, make sure that visually, contextually, the topic, the structure, it all references a type of activity, whether it's solve, optimize, or discussion forum. And that helps them clearly understand, well, I expect a lot of feedback. I don't expect a lot of feedback. In time, the employee base will all get it. They'll all start learning what is a good idea. What does it mean for it to be a good idea? What does it mean to collaborate with other people? So you need to give less feedback because you're not teaching them anymore. You're starting to diversify where now it's time to learn how to do a pitch. Now it's time to learn about a business model canvas, perhaps. Or now it's time to apply a lean startup methodology. These are all higher level. There's a certain amount of learning on our side or on your side or on the program side or on the employee base side. But the employee base by then, they got the baseline. They get it now, so they're not looking to be, I don't want to say coddled, but like in the beginning, you do need to support them, right? Does that answer the question?
It does.
Yeah. Another tactic is, of course, how many resources do you have? And tell your organization, that's maybe tied to tracking.
We spoke yesterday about automated messaging systems. So
yeah.
So once you have evaluated an idea, you could be utilizing the rules to have a catered message to send out to them. So you're able to send, if you go through, say, 50 ideas and only 10 of them are kind of plausible, that 40 could have an automated message that gets sent out. Thanks for your contribution. We really appreciate it. So they're feeling engaged without having to go in kind of nitpick each idea.
And that's, I think, one of the key questions is that does that still leave the employee engaged? Because I think if we can use automation and response by how far it goes through the process, that can certainly help us. What we were saying is we would provide a customized personal response to everybody, including the.
Generally speaking, this is go ahead, Jess.
Thanks. Sorry to make you guys break your necks here. So, Noam is from United Airlines, and they're actually jumping a little bit ahead. They're doing kind of suggest-related activities. Mm-hmm. This afternoon, I want to explore this a little bit, actually, this aspect of giving feedback to the audience. But we have on the panel this afternoon Rob Poole from Quicken Loans. They actually put in place an SLA that they share with their end users. Basically, within a week or something like that, you're going to hear back from us. So I think as you scale, putting rigor in place and obviously resourcing appropriately is the only way that you're able to accomplish that. But as everybody's saying here, it's pretty critical that you're following up with people because you lose engagement if you don't do that, right?
We got a question over here first.
I just actually wanted to comment on that because, and I'll personalize this because before Bright Idea, I ran an innovation program where I would manually create a personalized email to everyone who submitted an idea. And I was chatting yesterday, not only that, but their manager also was aware that that person submitted the idea. And then I went one step farther and I sent the manager's manager a note saying, thank you for supporting it through your manager. Wow. Now, I don't recommend, unless you don't get any sleep or don't, doing this, but what it did at that point in time was it gave us more credibility, gave me more credibility, I guess, because there was no us, in terms of why this is important from an engagement perspective. So, take that as, thank you.
One more?
Just talking about that last night, how important it is to let the manager know that their employees
have engaged, and what that we were debating. Can you spend that amount of time doing that? Is there something automated that automatically notifies their manager?
It is a balancing act. You got to be careful with the automation. You also got to be careful with what kind of resources you put into to communicating to everyone. I mean, in my direct experience, if you can communicate, if you have the resources, you should. But this is really also linked to what kind of activity you're running. Like, think about Discuss as an example. The communication is already happening. So it's not that you're expecting an immediate feedback to an idea. It's just a note. So the communication in itself is the activity. That's actually one of the reasons we do recommend starting with Discuss as an option, because in essence, you don't need to provide feedback because it's not an idea, it's just a consideration, it's a thought. And that feedback is happening by the greater audience themselves. Versus a stage where you have gone to suggest, suggest is an extremely interwoven, complex structure. You know, beyond just the entry point of an idea, you have, you know, the layers of the organization that idea is going to go to, full with automation. Everybody needs to be, you know, on the same page in terms of the responsibility and the task at all of those layers. That's also at the third, at scale stage of maturity. So that's actually, that was important criteria there. It's incredibly complex. Suggest, you know, that notion of give me any idea, it's an incredibly complex process. Versus Discuss or Solve, where it's very clear. So that is actually important criteria. Second question was over there. Then we had one more question over here, and then Genevieve.
How do you track and especially put metrics to ideas that apparently don't have a direct dollar impact, like that safety video? How could Virgin say precisely how many more dollars that video brought them?
So there's a lot of space in the intangibles, right? There's a lot of space. I mean, you could consider intangibles, you know, marketing dollars, marketing spend. I can't answer those questions directly. I'm not a marketing expert, but I'm pretty sure that in the case of the video, your marketing group, your marketing team, whoever was helping to bring that together, they can give you some core data points in terms of how to track, how they specifically track their existing marketing efforts. It really depends on what exactly you're trying to track. Like, if you go purely like engagement itself, this is usually, you think, well, how do we measure engagement in terms of a dollar amount? You can actually do that. There have been studies that show that a more engaged employee base is more productive, more efficient, more effective. They're not wasting time. One very, very, I mean, I don't want to say rudimentary, but it's a baseline way to understand, for example, if your internal employee base is engaged, and I'm always focusing on the start phase, the video is a layer of complexity, but purely from an engagement perspective, you run a survey before. What do you think of company X? What do you think of us? Are you happy with us? Are we innovative? Are we serving the customer best? You get some result. You start building the innovation program. You start engaging your audience. You start placing these future-facing considerations, thoughts within, seeding them within the organization. Run another survey. What do you think of company X? Are we innovative? Do we engage? That will show a shift. For sure, it will show a shift. Innovation is, for most people, they have no idea really what it is. It's this fuzzy cloud that does these crazy things, and there's startups, and there's all sorts of this and the other thing. Most people appreciate just the notion of innovation being built into your organization. Engagement would be a baseline. Now, with the marketing video, the next time I spend money, they'll never have seen my name spending any money. Suddenly, they're going to see my name. It's a new customer. I don't know if their marketing team connects to when I was flying, and I don't know. But I'm sure there are, I mean, this isn't, you know, a groundbreaking new technology we've found through the optimized process. We tweaked the video, and we tweaked the interface, and it's going to have an impact later. They probably know how to track it to an extent. We had one over here? Or we had a question over here, and then Genevieve. Go. Did you, unless Genevieve wanted to respond to, go ahead. Yes.
Thanks, Dennis. I just wanted to build on what George is saying, actually on both items, and obviously I'm coming from the product software side, but first just to touch on the qualitative outcomes, because I think it's fascinating, and we actually, when we first rolled out outcomes, we started to get a lot of feedback from Idea Space and just in conversations with customers that, hey, you know, I can't track everything I want to track, and your other bucket is just too general. So that's why we added the stuff like brand awareness and customer satisfaction, employee engagement. And I actually think that Virgin America video is a great example because, when marketing puts together a video like that, they're usually like user testing it and then they're getting data back, right? It's going to say something like 88% of flyers thought that this video was really engaging or really great. And that's the type of stuff we'd like you to put into that outcomes bucket right there. And similarly, something like brand awareness. Like I've watched that video as well I actually watched it on YouTube before I flew on Virgin because I heard about it. And so putting in a statistic like we got this many million YouTube views as well, which totally drives brand awareness from a marketing perspective as well. So I think those are some ways to start capturing that type of outcome because very hard to track revenue impact of a video for sure. So, so if you guys actually have other types of qualitative outcomes that you're looking for, please add those to Idea Space as well, because I'd like to consider other options. These are the first ones that came to us. And then just another quick point about feedback. Obviously, yes, you need to drive constant engagement, and if people aren't hearing back, they don't feel appreciated, and you're gonna kind of see that drop off. So absolutely, some of those automated status change emails, for sure, play a big role. What we also heard from customers is people want a little bit more detail in that feedback that they're getting back. And so with that evaluations tab that I showed yesterday, I didn't go into detail in the presentation yesterday, but it actually comes with an automated email as well. So as soon as those scorecards are done, an automated email, this is an option, you can trigger an automated email to go back out to the submitter and say, hey, feedback is available on your idea. And then the submitter can come back and take a look and see, how did I perform? And you can actually make that anonymous or not. So if, for instance, an evaluator doesn't want their name associated with a negative evaluation, you can actually make all those anonymous. So just one other way to kind of automate some of that back and forth with your user base.
Thank you, Genevieve. Last question.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Really enjoyed it and really excited about the apps. One challenge that I can see us possibly having is that there's so many features and so much functionality of all of these apps. Kind of communicating that to our end users. I don't know if you guys suggest just sending like an email out for each individual challenge or each challenge that's tied to a specific app, or if you suggest sending a kind of all-inclusive email out. Here's the 3 things that we've added as functionality to our platform. Come check it out today. If you guys have any suggestions on those marketing communications on how we can clearly explain the new features and functionalities and why our employees or our external users should actually come to the tool and engage with it.
Yeah, from the perspective of all the new toys, basically, I always position it that the end user, the product is for you. The functionality, the tools are for you. The way the end user experiences them is secondary to how you're using them. I always want the end user not to really need to know any additional detail. Obviously, we want to communicate what Discuss is as a concept. And of course, when you're doing that, you want to focus on the topic of Discuss, the topic of Solve. You don't want them thinking too much about the technology and the buttons. You want them, the most important thing you're going to get for them is what's going on in their head. So don't spend much time. I mean, obviously, the user experience should be seamless. And I mean, if you want to test it with a couple of your users, to make sure there's nothing that might confuse them. But generally speaking, the experience that they should have should be focused on the topic, not the tools. Like it's click a button, submit a note. Maybe you would want to start reinforcing the word note with Discuss. This links to the notion of Discuss is a type of activity. Solve is a type of activity. So you're submitting a note with Discuss versus submitting an idea. That's actually incredibly important as a concept, that a note is not meant to be implemented. A note is just it's a forum for discussion. So don't focus, I would say, too much on the product and like the functionalities, more so on the concept of what is Discuss and what is a note, what is Solve and what is a idea. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
So this is all kind of new, like, okay, idea, a note, discussion.
You're not doing them all at once, right? Keep that in mind.
But
So.
Need to know whether you're using Discuss or Solve.
They need to know what discuss as a concept is. Yeah, the topic, and that we're not looking for ideas that are going to be implemented and there's a solution. Discuss is we're just going to have a discussion about this theme. And in time, you'll start bucketing it and making it very clear that when they see a future solve, oh, that's problem solving, these are the factors, let me get to that. You also have a free hour, right? Or 2, I don't remember. So we can talk about this in much more depth because we're already at the time and they're starting to make noise. So you'll have to speak to your account manager. So whoever got the free hours, I've already missed it, so just come to the top and I'll write your names down and we'll get that one, we'll put that one on the side. All right, guys? Thank you for your time today.